wave feminists are the ones that are coming today, that we are seeing coming today. These are the postmodern feminists. There's no meta-narrative. There's no biblical story. There's no secular humanistic story. There is no meta-narrative. We write the script ourselves. This is born from a philosophic framework called monism. All is one. And when all is one, distinctives disappear. This is the worldview that has come out of Hinduism. It has come out of the East, where there's no distinction, everything is one. And the application of this in the sexual realm is that metaphysically there's no sex, there's no masculine and feminine, and biologically the sexes are interchangeable. A male can become a female can become a male. The fight of this wave of feminism is sexual distinctions. And what they are promoting is androgyny. The transcendent nature of sexuality disappears, but not just the transcendent nature of sexuality, male and femaleness disappears as well. Before you change a society, you must first change the language of the society. It's a sociological maxim. Whoever controls the language will control the future of a culture. So we see in this modern world that language becomes elastic. When I was growing up, under the memory of the old biblical paradigm, we talked about the sacredness of life. Today we talk about quality of life. The word life is the same. There's been a shift from sacredness of life to quality of life, and that has totally changed the culture. And that shift from the sacredness of life to the quality of life is a reflection of a shift in worldview. In a biblical worldview, we are made in the image of God, and all life, all human life is sacred. It doesn't matter whether it's young or old, big or small, healthy or unhealthy, human life is sacred. But when you do away with a biblical worldview and you adopt an atheistic worldview, there's no place to anchor the sacredness of life, and it all becomes about quality of life. Abortion in the old language used to be seen as a dirty word. There was a cultural revulsion against abortion. So the language was shifted from abortion to being pro-choice. Who can be against choice? That's a good word. We're all for choice. We move from what a woman calls what's in her womb a baby. That's what we've in past generations called what a woman carries in her womb as a baby, to tissue or the product of conception. The language has shifted, and the way you relate to a baby in a womb is very different than the way you relate to a product of conception. And we've moved from sex to gender. Sex is a biological term. There's a hardness to it. There's a factness to it. But today we speak of gender because gender is an elastic word. It's a social construct word. and it can mean whatever you want it to mean. In sex, when you use the word sex, you imply a distinction between male and female. But in gender, this is determined by social construct and social usage. The word sex is not an elastic word. It has substance to it. But the word gender is elastic. Sex is grounded in the essence of both biology and physiology, whereas gender is a construction from our own reality. Androgyny, this third wave of feminists, is being promoted at every turn. Michael Jackson, is he a male or a female? We know he was born a male, but if you look at him, which is he? You've all heard about or maybe seen the kiss. This was on global television between Madonna and Britney Spears. Two women. Full face kiss. French kissing. Why not? Gender is elastic. It can be two men. It can be two women. And in fact, if you want to change your body through chemicals and knives, you can do that as well. So this is where we are heading, and we see it around us every day. Not only are we changing words, we are changing the definition of words. Marriage was considered a sacred covenant between a man, a woman, and God until death do us part. When I was maturing, the definition of marriage changed to a social contract. God was no longer in the picture, and it wasn't a covenant between a male and a female before God. It was a social contract before a civil society of a man and a woman until they wanted to divorce. Today, right in front of our eyes, the newspapers, not just here but around the world, there is a new definition of marriage coming, being promoted, and that is a personal commitment between consenting adults as long as it's convenient. There are, when I've traveled to Central America, to South America, to Africa, there's discussions about redefining the concept of marriage. It's not just happening in the United States. It's happening globally. And there are initiatives coming from the United Nations to redefine marriage globally. What is the nature of marriage? On the one hand, it's uniformity. Male and male, female and female. On the other hand, it is correspondence. Equal and different, male and female. There is a war against women. There is gendercide taking place, 100 million fewer women. The murder of female, the murder of women happening around the world. And it is culturally established. It's culturally rationalized. If you can only have one child in China, what do you prefer? A male. And what are the social implications of a nation that has now roughly 30 million more males than females? What kind of havoc will that create in a society? But the war against women is also a war against motherhood. One of the women that I read in doing the research for this book is a woman named Anne Crittenden. Anne was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize in economic writing. She was a correspondent for the New York Times, their economic reporter. She writes for Newsweek and Fortune magazines. She's a visiting lecturer at MIT and Yale. And Anne, before she was married and before she had children, she would go to the parties in Washington and New York, and everybody wanted to talk to her because she had been nominated for this Pulitzer Prize. She was a great economics reporter. So she was the life of the party. Then she got married, and she had a baby, and she decided she did not want to work in journalism anymore. She wanted to be a mother. So she'd go to the same parties now, and when she would introduce herself, she would say, "I'm Anne Crittenden, and I'm a mother." And people would roll their eyes and say, "Isn't that nice?" and walk away. One time she walked into a room and somebody came up to her and said, "Didn't you used to be Anne Crittenden?" Well, she still was Anne Crittenden. But this is how society looks at females and mothers. I was at a Christian base that trains missionary leaders a couple of years ago, and there were about 40 people in this class I was going to be involved in. And they went around the room one after another, sharing their names, where they came from, and what they did. And the last person to speak was a woman, and she gave her name, and she said where she'd come from, and she said, "I'm only a mother." And I stopped everything right then, and I said, "Did you hear what she said?" And this was a room filled with Christian leaders. And these Christian leaders would talk about the importance of the family. But what did this young woman feel? She's only a mother. If you're not involved in ministry, you don't count. So this isn't just out there, it is in and within the life of the church. We have two types of worlds: the mother world and the money world.